with Heirloom.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Tori.
What's up, beer cats?
I'm Jake.
We're here to talk about craft beer and specifically lagers. So just to get us started off, what is a lager? Or how is it brewed, I guess, is my real question.
Yeah, great question. So there's typically two categories that people put beer in, either ale or lager. And those are the best starting places for figuring out what specifically makes something a lager. So ales are fermented at a warmer temperature. The yeast cells tend to congregate at the top of the beer, fermented usually a little more aggressively or faster. And then lager is the exact opposite. So the yeast cells typically congregate to the bottom, fermented a little slower. And what that really does that we're kind of looking for is the yeast character is usually really subtle in lagers.
Gotcha.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot longer of time to make a lager than an ale.
Yeah, I mean, typically there's definitely, I feel like with everything in beer now, there's almost zero specifics because somebody out there is making like insanely fast lager or something.
Yeah.
But typically and traditionally, much longer.
A lot slower. Man, in my mind, I always thought that lagers were just like this easy, quick thing just to pump out compared to an ale. So tell us the step-by-step process of making a lager. Is it any different than the traditional? And just tell us what you do to make a lager. Oh my gosh, a lager. I'm from Britain.
Very cool.
Yeah, so a lager really doesn't start becoming, it doesn't really start departing from an ale until the fermentation side. So a lot of these first steps are pretty similar on an ale.
Okay.
But basically what you're doing is you're mixing hot water with crushed barley that's been malted. And so what the water is doing is it's breaking down the husk and absorbing the sugars, and it gives us this nice sugar-dense liquid called wort. And that's what we're pushing into the kettle. And we boil that for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes if you don't boil it, you get off flavors from it because you haven't killed everything in there. So there's actually like all sorts of organisms, microorganisms that are alive before the boil. And then for me, I think it adds a lot of complexity because you're like caramelizing it.
Okay.
It's like if you're over a stovetop making,
Onions?
Yeah, or something like that.
Onions.
Yeah, exactly. When you're breaking all those things down, you actually get more complex flavors.
Okay.
And so we boil it. For us, that's anywhere from the lowest end is 75 minutes, and we actually do beers that are 10 and 11 hours.
Oh, wow.
Dang.
And yeah, we're really like going for a very specific thing when we do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then while it's boiling, all the hops that come across as bitter when you drink a beer and kind of sit on your tongue, those are all added during the boil.
Okay.
And that's where you get kind of the structure and the balance for working with sweetness and all the other things. And then you chill it. So basically after the boil, it's sitting around 212 degrees. So you chill it to whatever fermentation temperature your yeast is going to be happiest with.
Right.
And so this is where you really start to change lager and ale.
Gotcha.
And so when it goes into the fermentation tank, ales can be anywhere low end, like 62, 63 degrees, but most of them are right around 70 for fermentation temp.
Fahrenheit, right?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. That's super important.
Makes a big difference.
Yes. And then lager, depending on the yeast strain that you're using, anywhere from 45 to 53, 54.
So our next question is dark versus light. What is the difference between a dark lager and a light lager?
Okay. Yeah, great question again. So there's a lot of ways to make a beer dark.
Sure.
A lot of people making dark lager use this product called Cinnamar. which is basically a malt beverage syrup that you can add to your beer, and it just changes the color with very little ramifications to the taste
Gotcha.
or profile. It's super cool. It's way easy. A lot of people love how practical it is. I've kind of taken it upon myself and the team here that we're never going to use that. And so
Nice.
everything
That's
that
awesome.
makes our lagers dark or black is actually a specific malt that we're using. And we use this process called cap sparging, which is where when you're rinsing the grains that you've already used to get the last bit of sugar off of them, we'll actually throw our favorite colored malts in there.
Oh, cool.
So that it's not in there long enough or it doesn't steep at all. So
Okay.
you're not extracting a whole lot of the tannin or the roast profile. It's just the color.
Gotcha.
And that's what we do, and it's actually, I love doing it that way too.
What is your process for coming up with a new beer or a new lager? Because I know lagers have, is it 4 key ingredients, only ingredients?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going the super traditional route, you're using just barley, hops, water, and yeast, and no like rye or wheats or anything like that, and definitely none of the crazier shit that we put in beer all the time now. But it's, as far as process, we never sit down and go, well, we should make this category of beer or this genre of beer. We work mostly with profile. So a lot of times we're actually making a beer that we've imagined in our head that tastes like a certain thing or smells like a certain thing. And then circling back around and going, what category would this be in?
You were talking about the German rule
Yeah.
about lagers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so I'm gonna say it wrong, but it's basically like Reinskabat.
We'll write it right here.
Yeah,
This word right here.
But yeah, what happened was basically back in the day, you had a bunch of people that were just fermenting things that had no idea what they were doing, and so you had a lot of mostly bacterial fermentations, which can kind of fit into certain categories of beer.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
a lot of people had specific ideas of what they wanted with beer. There was a lot of black market, like 5th and 6th party beer stuff going on.
That's crazy.
And so Germany decided to put together this federal guideline for what you could put in beer to try to save themselves
Gotcha.
from some of these terrible things being sold as beer.
All right, what's the wildest beer you guys have put out?
Just right off the top of my head, we did this beer. I can't even remember what we called this beer. This is probably when you make like 80 beers a year.
That's fair.
We used Oklahoma grown barley, and then we used this yeast and bacteria culture that I had grown off of honeysuckle flowers. And
Interesting.
then we foraged these hops that we found just growing probably 30 minutes from here.
Wow.
And so
That's
it was
cool.
So it's
like,
actually Oklahoma grown
yeah.
beer.
Hops in the wild.
Yeah, it was 100% Oklahoma ingredients, and what's even crazier, so there's a lot of people that do like, this is 100% from our state stuff,
Yeah.
but usually where you grow barley, where you grow hops, those kind of things are very separate. So it still ends up being like you're covering hundreds of miles, the distance between these ingredients. And what was cool is it was like, man, like everything that went into this beer is like within an hour and 20 minutes. of each other.
Foraged.
Yeah.
Does the water matter in beer? Like, can you just get any water?
Yeah, that's actually, so like part of the rustic part of our name comes from this idea that we just don't treat our water ever. So like a lot of people want to achieve a certain water profile, whether it's like a classic German profile or a classic Belgian profile, or like with making IPAs, there's a lot of data out there about, you know, how you can get the hops to speak a little louder if you have this, you know, in your water or not, or this, you know, kind of formula. And for us, that's something that we've done since day one and will do forever, is we do have a filter that removes all the like harmful stuff and stuff we just don't like that the city adds to the water.
Like what?
Like chloramines, things like that. But it keeps all the...
It sounds bad.
Put it right here.
Right.
Sounds like a chemical.
Right. And what also is crazy about that one is the more you heat it, actually the more concentrated it gets. So like a lot of stuff, you know, breaks down when you're boiling it,
Right.
not chloramine. So that's one of the reasons why we have the filter system that we do.
What makes Heirloom's lagers unique?
First, I would say we never touch our water profile. It's always the same. And so that reflects in these very like subtle, nuanced, loaded beers. Second thing that I'm super proud of is we do not add anything. We do not add anything in the kettle to pull solids out. We don't add anything in the fermentation tanks, which is a pretty common practice, sometimes even in Germany. You get a lot of people to kind of speed up the process on these beers, add you know, fish bladder or some sort of chemical to pull all of the solids and the things keeping it from bringing those bright, clear beers we expect when we order a lager. You know, if you're just using cold temperature to do that, it takes, you know, a minimum, I would say, of 3 weeks, and usually more like 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay, wow. What locally could, besides, let's say regionally, like Oklahoma, what kind of beer should they try as far as a lager that could open their eyes to lagers?
And maybe Oklahoma, and then maybe more like a
regional one.
regional or worldwide, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can dream up.
Yeah, I think Marshall and Stone Cloud do a great job of making these, like, I mean, they're great lagers that get distributed all over the place. I mean, I think you can probably get both of those beers in any rural part of Oklahoma at this point.
Marshall's this land?
This land, yep.
Okay.
And then Stone Cloud is Havana Affair.
Nice.
I think those are great places to go and have, like, I mean, both of those breweries care a whole lot about their lager production and their lager programs, and those are widely available. If you want a full distro,
Give me that full distro.
I don't even know. There's not one I would feel comfortable recommending, because lager, part of the experience with lager is drinking it fresh.
Okay.
So come to Heirloom.
Yeah.
We're in Tulsa.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And then if you want a global one, I tell everybody they should drink Pilsner Urquell,
Okay.
which is a Czech beer. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. I still have those beers every month. Like, I can't get enough of that beer. It's great.
Nice.
We'll definitely have to try that one. Well, thank you, Heirloom. Thank you, Jake. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for watching. Also, we have a Patreon now, so please go check it out. It's patreon.com/beercatbrett. It's right here.
We hope this opened your eyes to lagers. At least give them a try. They're great.
They're amazing.
I know you're going to love them. So
Yeah.
thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.